Okay, good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, March the 26th, and welcome to my final NFL mock draft of 2026. We are now 4 weeks out, 28 days away from the official NFL draft on April 23rd in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Going to be a really good time for any football fans out there. I've been doing mock drafts the entire year. I enjoy these. I think they're a lot of fun. This is going to be my final one that I'm going to do now that we're about a month out from the actual. My name is Simon Erickson. My day job is picking stocks at 7investing.com. I think there's a lot of similarities between finding stock market recommendations and best buys and actually picking players in positions of need for teams in the NFL. That's why there's an overlap between my hobby and my passion here and also my professional career between NFL draft day and NFL and stock picking. So check out 7investing.com if you get a chance, and if you also want to be a long-term investor just like I am. But today, we're going to talk about a lot of things that have happened over the offseason of the NFL. We've seen a lot that's happened most recently here in the Combine. We've seen a lot that's been happening with trades. We've seen a lot of free agency going on. We've seen a lot of player evaluation shift in the draft order over the last few months, call it the last 2 or 3 months since the regular season ended. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to do a full first round mock draft here. I'm going to propose 2 trades in the first round. And as always, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the consensus. I do this based on what I think teams are actually going to do when we get to April 23rd. So with all of that said, I now declare my mock draft for 2026 officially open. And with the very first pick of the 2026 mock draft, I have the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Fernando Mendoza. There's really no explanation necessary for this one. They're looking for their franchise QB. This is going to be perfect for Tom Brady. They are not going to trade the pick. I'm looking forward to what Mendoza can do in Las Vegas with that first overall pick. The draft really starts now at pick number 2. The New York Jets are in a rebuilding mode. They traded a lot of their key defensive players last year because they wanted to rebuild the offense. Simply not going to happen, though, with only one franchise quarterback on the board. They brought in Geno Smith. I think he is a stopgap solution for the team. I think it's going to be great for this year, but they're going to go after their franchise quarterback in 2027 and are going to refocus their efforts on drafting the best players available at the spots they have at number 2 and then at number 16 this year. So with the number 2 pick in the 2026 draft, I expect the New York Jets to select David Bailey, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech. This is the tagline I have for this one is win now. The other player that is highly considered right here is going to be Arvell Reese out of Ohio State. But I think that the Jets and Aaron Glenn need to show a lot of progress here in 2026. This is going to be more of a development project because his natural position is off-ball linebacker. They want to move him to the edge. I think David Bailey is a more polished edge rusher. He's certainly got the finishing moves. He had the sack production last year in college at Texas Tech. I think he's going to be much more of a contributor in the first year. Even though there might be more potential for Reese to be the better player over the long term, I think the Jets and especially Aaron Glenn are on the hot seat to show more wins this year. I think David Bailey is ready to provide that production in his rookie year. So with the number 2 pick, I have the Jets selecting David Bailey, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech. The 3rd pick belongs to the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals, we all know, have got a gap, a void in their roster at right tackle. They're also got some quarterback questions about who's going to be the next franchise quarterback for this team. I think that those are not going to be addressed with the 3rd pick. I think that at this pick, you simply cannot reach that deep into bringing in a right tackle or a quarterback. I think you have to select the best player available. And so with that 3rd pick, I have the Arizona Cardinals selecting Arvell Reese, the linebacker and edge rusher out of Ohio State. This is simply called the best player available. It's simply too intriguing to take Reese right here. The Cardinals, of course, we know that they like to draft edge rushers in the first round. They put a lot of edge rushers on the line here recently. They've had a couple of questions about whether Josh Sweat is going to stay with the team and what the defense is going to look like going forward. I think Reese is going to be a good fit for this defense, though, for a team that likes to draft defensive superstars early in the first round. So I think the Cards can't go wrong with picking up Arvell Reese at number 3, the linebacker and edge rusher out of Ohio State. With the 4th pick of the NFL draft, I have the Tennessee Titans selecting Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame. This is a popular pick. This is a consensus pick that I actually will agree with. We saw that the Titans did not bring in any other running backs during free agency. They lost Rico Dowdle during free agency. They actually are a team that likes to run the ball. Derrick Henry, still fresh on everyone's mind of how good it is to have a strong running game. You've got Robert Saleh in there right now. He brought in a lot of defensive players through free agency and during the offseason. I think that you can check the box on a lot of those positions that were of need for the defense. Now you've got to start giving Cam Ward another weapon on offense to start putting points on the board. We know there's going to be a delta still, right? The Titans didn't score a whole lot of points last year, and their defense gave up way too many points last year. They've addressed the defensive side of that equation. Now it's time to go out and find your offensive playmaker. Jeremiah Love simply is that player. I never thought he was going to be this high in the draft until I saw the need for the running back position, being that there's a huge drop-off from Love to the second best running back in this class. And then also the Titans really, really need some offensive firepower. They did bring in Wan'Dale Robinson at wide receiver. I like that move. I don't think they're going for another wide receiver here with the number 4 pick. I think Love only makes sense as a versatile offensive playmaker for the Tennessee Titans at number 4. With the 5th pick of the 2026 NFL Draft, I have the New York Giants selecting Sonny Styles, the linebacker out of Ohio State. For those keeping score, this is the second Ohio State Buckeye in the top 5 to go off the board at the top of this class. Sonny Styles, the only thing that you can knock him for is positional value. It is rare to see a team take an off-ball linebacker, a middle linebacker, this early in the draft. But John Harbaugh is a coach that I don't think is going to care as much about that. I think he is more concerned about getting the culture right and getting the right player who loves football on his team. And that's exactly what Sonny Styles is. I mean, he impressed everyone at the combine. Incredible performance, not only in terms of the 40-yard dash, in terms of the broad jump, in terms of the high jump. All of those were off the charts amazing. But he's just got a really good football IQ. In fact, if you watched any Ohio State games last year, you could see right there in the middle of the defense. I mean, Arvell Reese was amazing. There's no discounting that. But also there was a lot of eyes on Sonny Styles as the playmaker and the general of that defense. He simply did not miss tackles. He could put heat on the quarterback. He could drop back in coverage. He's a former safety. He's got the physical tools at his disposal. I think he's going to fit in really, really well with the New York Giants, who have got a really good pass rush, a really good defensive line, need some help stuffing the run. They need some help on the tackling right there in the middle of the field. And I think Sonny Styles is going to provide that. Again, some might say this is early for a linebacker, good number 5. I don't think it matters to John Harbaugh. I think he's going with Sonny Styles at number 5 to the Giants. With the 6th pick of the 2026 NFL Draft, I have the Cleveland Browns selecting Monroe Freeling, the left tackle out of Georgia. This is one that was off of a lot of people's radar early in the mock draft season because a lot of people assumed he was going to go back for another year. He actually declared for the draft, lit it up in the combine. He's got very long arms. He has great physical tools at his disposal. He's 6'7" tall. I mean, this is kind of the prototypical left tackle that you want to have. He doesn't have as much experience as some of the other offensive tackles in this class. But if you looked at the moves that the Browns made during the offseason, they shored up a lot of the offensive line, especially on the right-hand side. Titus Howard coming in from the Texans, you can plug him right in. He was getting paid as a right tackle. I think that he's going to be the starting right tackle for next year. It still leaves a void over there on the left-hand side of the line, especially with the injuries that they've had recently to their starting left tackle. I think Monroe Freeling can come in, play wherever the Browns need him, but most likely he's going to be the starter over on the left-hand side. And if you're going to have Shedeur some coverage, you know that Shedeur is a pocket passer. He's an accurate passer, but he needs some time and he needs some blindside protection. That's everything that Monroe Freeling can bring to this team as they start to rebuild that offense up. I think this just makes sense. This is perhaps a reach if you're looking at just the big boards out there to see Freeling go this early. But again, if you're the Browns, you have to address the position of need, which is the offensive line, before you can go after the skilled position. So I think Monroe Freeling at number 6 to the Cleveland Browns as a left tackle makes a lot of sense. With the 7th pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, I have the Washington Commanders selecting Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. One more Ohio State Buckeye goes now in the top 7. This makes a lot of sense to me. I think that they want to support Jaden Daniels. The Commanders did a lot for their defense in the offseason. They had a very, very old, very sluggish, very slow defense. They brought in a lot of players to address that, especially on the edge rusher position. On offense, we did see Terry McLaurin just get a 3-year extension, which is great, but the Commanders really want to have a second really reliable receiver for Jaden Daniels to target. Just like McLaurin, this is another Ohio State alumni. McLaurin was also a Buckeye as well. I think that in year one, Tate is just going to fit like a glove into this offense. And of course, there's a new offensive coordinator, former QB and quarterbacks coach, David Blau, I believe his name is, whose goal was to focus on Jaden Daniels' development. I think it's going to be a natural fit to give him another reliable receiver, knowing that the pieces of this offense are coming together. I think the Commanders did what they needed to on defense. Now it's time to address the offense. You got a new OC. Give him a good tool for Jaden to throw to. Carnell Tate, number 7 to the Commanders, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. At the number 8 pick of the 2026 NFL Draft, I had the New Orleans Saints selecting Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver out of the University of Southern California. Okay, there's my Drew Brees jersey. You can see where my allegiance is. I've got Saints memorabilia all around the background that I'm filming in right now. That's because I've been a New Orleans Saints fan since I was 7 years old, growing up in New Orleans, met all of the players back then. It was amazing. Ricky Jackson, Pat Swilling, that defense was deadly. I've been a lifelong Saints fan, so this pick means a lot to me. Seeing my team rebuilding and seeing what Tyler Shuck has already done in his rookie year last year. Kellen Moore knocked it out of the park with that pick in the second round. Now it's time to give him another weapon alongside Chris Olave. And I think Mekhi Lemon is exactly the receiver that will fit what the Saints need the most right now. He's primarily a slot receiver, where Olave is typically playing as the X. And that really gives Lemon as the opportunity to kind of spread the field up for Shuck, right? He's going to be the guy that's going to do the seams. He's going to run the slant routes. He's going to pick up the first downs 10 yards down the field. And then Olave will be the one that will be good for the deep ball. Kellen Moore is going to get the most out of Mekhi Lemon. Of course, Kellen Moore, previously the offensive coordinator of the Eagles, previously a quarterback himself. I think this is the right fit for a Saints offense that is looking for more firepower. I'm excited to see Mekhi Lemon go number 8 to the New Orleans Saints. With the 9th pick of the 2026 NFL Draft, I have the Kansas City Chiefs selecting Ruben Bain Jr., the edge rusher out of Miami. This was the best defensive player in college football last year. Bain has incredible physical gifts. He can get low when he's rushing the quarterback. He can bend as an outside linebacker or a outside defensive end for a 4-3 formation. But he's also someone who has got short arms, and a lot of people say, maybe he could have been earlier if he just didn't have those sub 32-inch arms for an edge rusher out there. I think that you've got to give a little bit of grace to a player right there that was so productive in college football. Maybe the stats and the analytics will say to stay away from a player like that, but I actually think number 9 to the Chiefs is the absolute floor of where Bain is going to go. I think they're wanting to bring in some support for Chris Jones right there on the defensive line. We've seen the Chiefs prioritize offensive, especially lineman positions in recent drafts. I think with Mahomes coming back, you're probably going to see them go after a receiver either later in this round or in the early second to support Mahomes. But I do think that Bain is just too intriguing to pass up on if he's available there at number 9. So I have Bain from Miami Hurricanes going to the Chiefs at number 9. With the 10th pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, I have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Caleb Downs, the defensive back out of Ohio State. A lot of people say that Downs is the highest IQ player in this draft class. It's hard to disagree with him. He's a very cerebral player. His brother's already playing in the NFL. His father was a football player before him. He was a starter at Alabama his very first year for Nick Saban. He understands coverages. He understands what formations are going to look like when the offenses are running up against him. I think he's the safety that the Bengals need right now, knowing that Cincinnati has not had good play at safety in recent years. In addition, there's a lot of other things going on with the Bengals. They're trying to rebuild a lot of other parts of this roster. They, of course, just lost Trey Hendrickson, but they did, kind of address some of this during free agency. They just re-signed their interior offensive lineman. I think they're going to go after the defensive best player available. With the exception perhaps of cornerback with that number 10 pick, I think it's a natural fit for Downs. He's going to be kind of the general of the secondary And if you're the Bengals, you need a cultural guy, you need a general, you need somebody who's going to be out there calling the plays out for everybody else to follow along with. That might be the right important first step for them to rebuild this struggling defense. With the 11th pick of the 2026 draft, I had the Miami Dolphins selecting Mansour Delane, the cornerback out of LSU. You've got a leadership change in the front office of the Dolphins right now. They're rebuilding, right? You've got a new general manager, John Eric Sullivan, new head coach, Jeff Hafley. Those are both coming from the Packers, who, of course, Jair Alexander and others have always had a pretty good secondary. The Dolphins secondary has struggled in recent years. They have actually given up a ton of passing yards per game last season. And I think that if you watched any of their tape last year, it was just dreadful coverage. I mean, just blown assignments, giving up way too many yards, giving up too much yardage to tight ends and your short routes and simple things. I think that even though they lost several players during the offseason, whether that's on the defensive line or the wide receiver, Jaden Waddles that they just lost, I think that they're going to take a wide receiver a little later on. I think they're going to take an edge rusher a little bit later on. I think you just have to go after the best player that's in the cornerback position right now, and that's Mansour Delane out of LSU. Just a fantastic quarterback, lockdown cornerback all year. Very, very low passer rating against him. The tape showed well, not the perfect size, but I think he is the best cornerback in the draft. I have Mansour Delane going number 11 to the Miami Dolphins. With the 12th pick in the NFL draft for 2026, I have the Dallas Cowboys taking Dylan Thieneman, the safety out of Oregon. This is an interesting one. This is one that's going to be off of consensus. Thieneman has been rising up on the draft boards recently. He typically was not even looked at in the beginning of the college football season to be a first-round prospect. But he's just a very versatile player. He's one of those Kyle Hamilton or Caleb Downs kind of players that can roam free in the secondary of a defense, right? He's out there that can do a lot of different assignments and a lot of different things. And the Cowboys, who did take Savon Ravel last year at cornerback, probably still need to rebuild their secondary a little bit. I think that Thieneman is going to fit. You've got a new defensive coordinator coming into the Cowboys. His name is Christian Parker. He's coming from Vic Fangio's defense from Philadelphia Eagles. If you remember Philadelphia Eagles, they had a very kind of that same versatility in their secondary. You had players that could kind of do different adjustments. They could line up at the line of scrimmage. You could play them in the nickel. You might have some safeties that were taking cornerback assignments sometimes. And I think that that's what Thieneman's going to do. They're going to have that same versatility in the defensive secondary that's going to make a lot of sense. And with Thieneman's draft stock rising up after the combine, which was fantastic, I think this is going to fit right in with what the Dallas Cowboys are wanting to do, especially in a division, the NFC East, that likes to throw the ball. You've got to have some good secondary coverage out there. So I think Thieneman will be drafted as a free safety. The Cowboys did just sign Jalen Thompson to be a strong safety, one that will be more supportive against the run and a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. I think Thieneman's going to play free. I think that's going to be a good fit for the Cowboys. My favorite pick of my entire mock draft is coming up at number 13 to the Los Angeles Rams, which they acquired from the Atlanta Falcons in a trade last year. So my favorite pick of the 2026 NFL draft is with the 13th selection, the LA Rams select Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona State. Now hold on before you get the torches and the pitchforks. Yes, I know Tyson has an injury history, collarbone, hamstring issue, knee injuries. There's a long list of injuries that this guy has gone through because he is an all-out player. You can't sometimes have your cake and eat it too. You can't have a player that's going to go out there and want the ball every single play and run hard before and after the catch and not have the risk of them getting injured. Tyson, yes, he's got the injury history, but he's also a player that goes out there and gives 110% every single play from the line of scrimmage. This is my favorite pick of my mock draft because the Rams know they get one more year with Matthew Stafford at quarterback. The NFL MVP wants a Super Bowl with Les Snead. How are they going to get that? How is Sean McVay going to get the most out of his superstar quarterback for one more year? You give him one more playmaking option while the window is open out there. There are other players you could pick here. You could go after more help for the secondary. You could go for the offensive line. You could go for building blocks that, probably are going to play out 3 or 4 years down the road to be pretty well, that are safer picks. But Jordan Tyson, in the worst case scenario, he gets injured early in the season. You still got Puka Nacua. You still got Devontae Adams. You still got a very high octane, high performance offense, even if that happens. But in the best case scenario, you're adding another third wide receiver weapon in addition to the 4 tight ends that this team has on the roster right now. This is going to be impossible for defensive secondaries to cover all of those top tier wide receivers. And I think that Stafford, who is just an artist, lining up under scrimmage, seeing his receivers, knowing exactly what the playbook has, being creative with it, and then finding when things break down or things change, finding the open receiver. Jordan Tyson's going to be exactly what they need. This makes a top tier offense even better. I'm excited to see what Jordan Tyson would do with the Los Angeles Rams there with the 13th. With the 14th pick of the NFL draft, I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Francis Mauigoa, the right tackle out of Miami. Again, this is back to the Ravens again after the trade fell apart. We know that Max Crosby was going to go out to the Ravens for 2 first-rounders. Something happened. I don't want to speculate, but the trade fell through based on a failed physical. Crosby's back on the Raiders once again, and the Ravens have this pick once more. I think that, when you see the Daniel Falele, he struggled at right guard last year, lost him at free agency. You need to plug in a right guard to that position. But you also have had some injury concerns, even at the tackle spots for the Ravens recently as well. And so Mauigoa, even though he is technically a right tackle, I think he might start the year at right guard, where there's a void on that offensive line roster. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him be a swing tackle that can change assignments or positions if necessary. He seems like a player that's versatile enough to do that. He seemed like he was open to doing that in the interviews that he did right after the combine out there. I think that the description of this pick is offensive line depth. I think that, again, the Ravens, would really love to have even more protection for Lamar Jackson. And Derrick Henry, how good could it be to have another people mover right there on the line for the best running back in the league, who is ageless, who seems to get better every single year. I think that the Ravens, if they want to pursue a Super Bowl this year, they would be wise to invest in their offense with their top pick. And so I have the Ravens at number 14, going with Francis CC Mauigoa, the right tackle out of Miami. I have our first trade of the 2026 draft happening at number 15. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are trading down with the Philadelphia Eagles. Specifically, the Buccaneers are giving the number 15 pick to the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange for pick number 23 and second round pick number 54. And with the 15th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles are moving up to draft Spencer Fano, the right tackle out of Utah. First of all, Jason Licht loves to trade down. GM from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers has a long and tenured history of trading down even in the first round of the draft. Secondly, the Eagles GM, Howie Roseman, loves to trade up. We've seen many times in recent years the Eagles trade up, especially in the first round. Thirdly, the Eagles really want to add some more offensive line depth. Lane Johnson is getting older. We have seen injuries last year. We have seen several of their offensive linemen pushing into their mid-30s. It's time for the Eagles to think 1 year ahead of schedule and ahead of need. Even though they do have the roster complete for this year, I think that Fano is going to be worth the investment for this team that really likes to maximize its long-term opportunities rather than just go after the player that they need in the position they need at the time of being. He's a zone blocker. He moved around a lot in Utah. He wasn't just a pass protector. He was a guy that could move people, have versatility in positions. That's exactly what the Eagles love to do with Saquon. Open up those rushing lanes. If you want to sweep outside, you can do that too. Fano was very, very solid. Didn't give up a sack last year at all. I think that with a lot of aging veterans on the roster, the Eagles would be wise to jump right in front of the Lions, or at least 2 picks in front of the Lions right here to draft Fano if he's still available, and say, he's probably one of the top 2 tackles in this class, right tackles in this class. You can move inside if you need him to. I think this is a big win for the Eagles' future. And so with that 15th pick, I have the Eagles jumping up in a trade with the Buccaneers to draft Spencer Fano, the right tackle out of Utah. With the 16th pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, I have the New York Jets selecting Jermon McCoy, the cornerback out of Tennessee. Press man coverage. McCoy is right there in your face. Great hips, great movement, able to move on a dime and just jam up wide receivers right at the line of scrimmage. That's perfect for the Jets, who no longer have Sauce Gardner. They traded him away to the Colts, part of why they have this pick in the first place. And again, they kind of wanted to have a quarterback, kind of wanted to have a wide receiver, that they were rebuilding the offense in this draft. But just the way that the board fell and then Dante Moore not declaring this year, I think it's going to be wiser for them to kind of, if this makes sense, replace the same positions they traded for, knowing that they also amassed draft capital for 2027. And next year's draft class is looking like it is going to be chock full of good quarterbacks and good wide receivers, which are the positions that the Jets are really going to need. So I think they're going to hold on to those picks for next year's draft class to address and rebuild the offense, and then go after the defense all in with these first two picks this year. Jermon McCoy, of course, needs no explanation. For anyone who's been following the draft this year, was injured last year, the ACL tear. We haven't even seen how he moves here in 2025. This is assuming the medicals check out at Pro Day, assuming he can still run really quickly, assuming that he looks the same as he did in 2024. This is probably, he's right up there with Mansour Lane as the best cornerback in the class, assuming that everything looks as good as it did before. I am assuming that that's going to check out. I think this is a value pick for the Jets at number 16, especially with a former defensive back, Aaron Glenn, as the head coach of this team, who embarrassingly did not get a single interception all year last year. I think Aaron Glenn's going to say, we got to fix this. We got to get a press man cornerback to do some man coverage on our defense and the schemes that they're running out there. One more thing, the Jets' secondary scheme does play man coverage quite a bit more than other teams out there in the NFL. So McCoy would kind of be a perfect fit for the scheme and for this team and for the coach. So with that 16th pick, I have the Jets selecting Jermon McCoy, the cornerback out of Tennessee. With the 17th pick, I have the Detroit Lions selecting Caden Proctor, the left tackle out of Alabama. This is going to be another controversial one. I don't think I've seen very many other mock drafts with Proctor going this high. There are other options for the Lions. One option could be to bring in a second edge rusher right there next to Aiden Hutchinson. Perhaps, but you've also got your starting left tackle, Taylor Decker, just released. He wanted a release. He said, I want out of Detroit. They said, okay, we grant you release of your contract. Now you're going after finding a left tackle that can immediately start and immediately plug in to that offensive line. Monroe Freeling would have been fantastic for the Lions, but he went early to the Browns there at number 6. And so what if you're Detroit? Well, you go after the player that's plug and play ready. This is a 3-year starter. Caden Proctor was at Alabama. By the way, Brad Holmes, the GM of the Lions, loves to draft Alabama players in the first and second round. If you look at their draft history, he's very familiar with the program. Of course, it all goes all the way back to Nick Saban. He still kept a good relationship with the Alabama team and the Alabama coaching staff. I think that Proctor, massive human being that he is, 380 pounds, he'll probably lose a little bit of weight because we know that Detroit likes to run a zone scheme. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs back there. He's a really speedy running back. But I think that this is more for pass protection. Caden Proctor, just a massive man mover right there on the offensive line. Hard to get around him. Not as good in those zone blocking schemes, but I think that in terms of gap or man blocking, he's just the right guy at a left tackle naturally. And so Detroit's going to want to keep him on the left-hand side of the line. I think he makes a lot of sense. This is a difficult evaluation, by the way. Again, 6'7", 375 pounds, 3-year starter at Alabama. He doesn't have the quickest feet, though. Has penalties sometimes against him, right? There's a lot of things that maybe don't make this the safest pick for the Lions. There are a lot of things that might not go right. But again, there's also a lot of things that might go very well. I think he's got the most upside of any tackle in this class just because of the sheer power that Proctor possesses. With the 18th pick of the NFL draft for 2026, I have the Minnesota Vikings selecting Caleb Banks, the defensive tackle out of Florida. This is an interesting evaluation. Again, another one that I'm going off of the consensus. Most mock drafts have the Vikings giving Brian Flores another defensive back, either a safety or a cornerback, for their press-heavy scheme. The Vikings love to blitz. They love to have, I believe it's more than 50% of snaps for the defense, going right after the quarterback, get your edge rushers right in their face. And so you want to have a press cover secondary, or cornerback, whoever that might be, right in the face of the defense of the wide receivers. Your defensive backs right there. But we've also seen Delane go off the board, and then we just saw Jermon McCoy go off the board. There's a little bit of a gap there, I think, between the third best cornerback in this class. And I also saw the Vikings, they lost a couple of their defensive playmakers here in the most recent offseason. They lost Javon Hargrave. They lost Jonathan Allen. Those were big bodies, older guys at the end of their contracts that they lost during the offseason right there. We know that the Vikings like to have a very strong defensive line presence right in the middle to stuff the run. And then also some quick edge rushers, again, for the blitz that they like to bring in the middle from their linebackers. Banks is 330 pounds. He could immediately fill in as a defensive tackle, perhaps even a nose tackle right there in the 3-4 if you wanted him to. He could even move outside a little bit for a 3-4 defensive end. He's going to immediately make an impact. This guy is huge, 6'6", great wingspan, going to stuff the run, going to put some heat on the quarterback. I think he's a good fit for what the Vikings are wanting to do. And so I think that, this is going to be a good move. You're going to see some competition on the quarterback position now that Kyler Murray is up in Minnesota. I think they have a lot of tools and a lot of pieces that they're going to want for the offensive side of the ball. I think they're going to be a defensive player that gets selected here at 18. And so that's why I have Caleb Banks, defensive tackle out of Florida, going to the Vikings here at number 18. Okay, now let's look at the playoff teams. We went through the top 18 at the top of the round. Let's look at the teams that made the playoffs this year and how they're going to rebuild their rosters in the second half of the first round. The first of those being at number 19, I had the Carolina Panthers selecting Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon. This is another one that's off consensus. A lot of people say, no way the Panthers are going to take a tight end this early. We're going to see them take an edge rusher, a linebacker, somebody on the defensive side of the board. I disagree. I think that, once we saw Teteroa McMillan last year with their number one pick, I believe it was number 8 last year that the Panthers took him. I mean, just an immediate playmaker for Bryce Young, immediately changed the whole feel of that Panthers offense. They had a very good running game last year, too. And I think that when you combine both of those, a team that made the playoffs now, I think they're going to want to add one more offensive weapon for Young in his continued development. And you get a 2-for-1 with Kenyon Sadiq. Not only are they kind of vacant in their tight end position, nothing against Tommy Tremble, but he's certainly not a tier 1 tight end in this league. But if you give a reliable target for Bryce Young to throw the ball to, which Sadiq is, but then also another inline dependable blocker for the offensive line, you're unlocking the rushing game as well. You kind of get the 2-for-1 option with Sadiq, who has certainly shown poise, certainly shown the ability to do blocking, certainly reliable-handed. I think this is kind of a nice, versatile piece that I would love to see the Panthers select at number 19. Even though they're the rival of my Saints, I'm going to give them the credit on this one for making a good choice that will help build them up even further in 2026. Panthers at 19 going with Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon. With the 20th pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting C.J. Allen, the linebacker out of Georgia. This is a Mike linebacker, middle linebacker. Cowboys did a lot of rebuilding on defense during the offseason this year. Credit to Jerry Jones as it is due for there. But they haven't yet addressed the linebacker position, right? They're running a 3-4. This is a new defensive scheme for them. They're going to have 2 middle linebackers in the middle. I think that C.J. Allen has got grit. I think he's a reliable tackle. I think he's going to see plays at the line of scrimmage. I think that when you see the moves that they made last year, Quinnen Williams right there on the defensive tackle spot, Rashawn Gary, a really big, imposing defensive end right there on the line of scrimmage. You want to have a layer right behind him, that second level of linebacker that's able to stop the run right off the line of scrimmage. And I think when you talk about that middle linebacker, that Mike linebacker position, C.J. Allen's kind of the perfect fit for what the Cowboys want to do. And so you think about this, you add Thieneman there at number 12 as a safety to build up the secondary. And then you kind of put in the second level of C.J. Allen. You've got all 3 levels now. Check for the Cowboys. This might be turning one of the league's worst defenses last year, who gave up 30 points a game, into something that is much improved. Will be interesting to see what the Cowboys look like in 2026. But I have them at number 20, taking C.J. Allen, that linebacker out of Georgia. Here's another veer from consensus. With the 21st pick of the NFL Draft, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Ty Simpson, the quarterback out of Alabama. I think there's no doubt in anyone's mind, or at least most people's mind, that Ty Simpson is QB2 in this draft, the second best quarterback in the draft behind Fernando Mendoza, who is almost certainly going in number 1. Now, how far does he fall is the question. Let's first consider if Pittsburgh does not take him here at number 21. It would be very likely that the Cardinals or the Jets or some other QB needy team might jump up into, maybe the Browns, would jump back into the bottom half of the first round, trade up, into the first round to pick up Simpson there. And in fact, during the offseason, Ty Simpson's dad revealed that out of the teams that they met with, multiple teams gave him a first round grade. Is there bias in that? Yes. Is that marketing of your own son, promoting him before the season gets started and the draft is underway? Yes, of course, there's bias in this. But I think it's probably true, too. I think it's Ty Simpson, not the biggest passer, not the best arm out there, not the best physical tools, but he's really got the heart and he's got the soul for a team that he's going to join. If you've seen him at Alabama, just the kind of presence you want to have there at the quarterback. The son of a quarterback coach. His dad is a head coach. He just developed him, and he has the tools to play for Alabama. And I think that the Steelers have to at some point recognize you can't just keep re-signing Aaron Rodgers to these one-year deals every year. The guy is over 40 years old already, 42 years old, right? At one point, are you going to rip off the Band-Aid? And the Steelers have a good enough team that they're not going to be picking in the top 5 or top 10 of most future drafts. You're not going to get the best quarterback that's available next year. But you might get the second best quarterback that's available this year. And I think that Ty Simpson, if you let him sit for the first part of the season behind Aaron Rodgers for just that first part, I think that that's going to be really good for him. And I think he's going to be able to carry this team going forward, knowing that he's got a little bit more development that's needed, knowing that he does not have a ton of starts from college. But I think he's got the right tools in place that the Steelers with Mike McCarthy are going to want. And McCarthy's going to want his guy too, right? You don't want to just keep lingering around, with free agent quarterbacks you pick up in the offseason or, Rodgers, who's certainly one injury away from retirement. You've got to get your guy in there and start them from scratch. I think this is the opportunity for the Steelers to do that. I have them selecting Ty Simpson from Alabama as quarterback there at number 21. Please let me know your thoughts on this one. I know that's a controversial pick that is not consensus on a lot of other mocks. With the 22nd pick of the 2026 NFL Draft, I have the Los Angeles Chargers selecting Alea Vega Ioane, the inside lineman, offensive lineman, the left guard out of Penn State. We'll call him Vega from now on. Sorry about that, Vega. Vega Ioane, the best offensive lineman, probably one of the best offensive linemen this entire year. If you saw him at the combine, he moves really, really well. He's got great feet for his size out there. The Chargers really struggled with offensive line play all of last year. Not only did they lose Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, both of their starting tackles, for last year. I mean, that's just tough enough to come back from that by itself when you're losing both of your tackles. But also Zion Johnson on the left and then Mekhi Becton on the right did not play very well. He gave up way too many sacks for Justin Herbert. You hate to see a quarterback of that caliber taking as many hits as he did. He wore the Skeletor glove for the second part of the season, right during the playoffs, just to even show that he has the grit and he's going to play anyway. I felt bad for him having to wear that metal brace on his hand as he's out there taking hits from these guys. You've got to, Jim Harbaugh, please protect Justin Herbert at all costs this next year. Bring in Vega as the reliable offensive lineman that you need for this team. And I think that you could bring in a swing tackle that could move inside. Somebody like Caleb Lomu is still on the board here. But I think it just makes sense. You need a guard, draft the best guard. Vega Ioane at number 22 out of Penn State is a perfect fit for the Chargers. Okay, with the 23rd pick, a reminder, we had the Buccaneers trading down from the Philadelphia Eagles trading up. So the Buccaneers fall from 15 now to 23. And with that 23rd pick, I had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers drafting Akeem Mesidor, the edge out of Miami. Not a whole lot of moving costs just to pick up from Miami to go to Tampa Bay. I think keeping him in Florida, in-state, makes a lot of sense. Mesidor, of course, was the edge 2 rusher out there for the Hurricanes in college. Ruben Bain was getting a lot of offensive line attention. Mesidor was just as capable as rushing the quarterback. Again, a very large man, 270 pounds, very, very good, but very, very fast. A lot of speed, a lot of physical tools for this player. The Bucs, they didn't get their edge to work out with Hassan Reddick last year. So they're back at the well again, looking for another pass rusher here in 2026. I think that Mesidor was immediately productive throughout his college career. Again, he's an older prospect. I believe 26 or 27 years old on draft day. I think 26 is the right number. But again, he's immediately plug and play productive, right? Todd Bowles is going to want somebody that's got the versatility and the aggressiveness, and he doesn't have to wait on for 2 or 3 years to develop as an edge rusher. I think that Mesidor is going to come in there and immediately be the kind of fit that you want to have for this defense. And he can be aggressive from multiple positions. The Bucs are running a 3-4 right now. You could line him up right there on the defensive line if you wanted to, or you could even shift him outside if he loses a little bit of weight, picks up a little bit of speed to put him as offensive linebacker. Outside linebacker. So number 23, I have the Bucs taking Akeem Mesidor, the edge rusher out of Miami. With the 24th pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, the second pick of the round for the Cleveland Browns, and I have them selecting Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington. The Browns picked up this pick from the Jacksonville Jaguars. By trading down last year, they picked up Mason Graham, gave the Jaguars Travis Hunter. I think that Cleveland now still needs to have a wide receiver presence for Shedeur. We know that they went after the protection first and foremost. In my opinion, you got to go after the offensive line first and foremost. That's why they got Freeling there at number 6. Now it's time to go back and say, okay, what's the best receiver that's available right now here at number 24? I think Denzel Boston, he's another one of those kind of Rome Odunze Washington receivers, right? Sure hands, very reliable, going to catch everything you throw to him. He's 6'4". He's got a wide catch radius. Shedeur loves to be a pocket passer. He's going to want to have somebody downfield. He can just air it out and it's on the money. And then it's a 50-50 ball for, Boston to go up there and catch it. I think that's kind of what you need. With Boston right there, that reliable target for Shedeur right in the middle of the field. You want to see some development of this offense. I think that's going to be the right pick. Denzel Boston, number 24, going to the Cleveland Browns. With the 25th pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, I have the Chicago Bears drafting Caden McDonald, the nose tackle out of Ohio State. Nose tackle, not just defensive tackle. He's a nose tackle. This is a guy you put right in the middle of the defensive line to stop the run, to stuff the run. The Bears are running a 4-3, so he might be a defensive tackle, but we know what his assignment is going to be on that defensive line. Be the tree stump that no running back can get through between the tackles. That's what Caden McDonald did all through Ohio State. That's what the Bears need more than anything right now. Chicago gave up more than 5 yards per carry in the 2025 season. McDonald is the massive defensive tackle. He's going to clog up those rushing lanes. I think that puts him above Peter Woods in the evaluation of being the best defensive tackle for the Bears at this position. At Caden McDonald going number 25 to Chicago, he's a defensive tackle out of Ohio State. With the 26th pick of the NFL Draft, I have another trade, the second trade of the first round happening. I have the Arizona Cardinals trading up with the Buffalo Bills. The Cardinals will be trading pick number 34 of the second round and also pick number 65 of the third round to Buffalo for pick number 26. A slight premium for Arizona to move up. Buffalo is happy to trade down and make this deal. And with that 26th pick of the NFL Draft, I have the Arizona Cardinals selecting Blake Miller, the right tackle out of Clemson. If you remember what I said earlier, Arizona's going to pick Arvell Reese over a right tackle there at number 3. It only makes sense if you've got the number 3 pick in the draft to either pick the player that you evaluate as the first, second, or third best player in the class. So they punt on a right tackle, but then move back up into the first round to get the right guy to shore up the right side of the offensive line, right? Clemson had Blake Miller as a starter for multiple years right there at right tackle. He's reliable. He looked good at the combine. I think that if you're the Cardinals, you know that you have to jump in front of the Houston Texans. Probably also have to jump in front of the Kansas City Chiefs if you want to get the best right tackle that's still available. So you move up, you pay a little bit of a premium to move up to 26. I think it's worth it because if you check off defensive playmaker and you check off right tackle, you've hit kind of the two biggest needs for this draft. I think it's worth it to pay a little bit more to move up into the first to pick up Blake Miller and to pick up the fifth-year option of it being a first-round player. I think that Miller's a first, day one starter there at right tackle. I think that if you're Arizona, that's what you needed the most out of this draft class. And what more can you ask for coming out with Reese and Miller in the first round? So with that 26th pick, I have the Arizona Cardinals trading the pick with the Buffalo Bills to trade up to 26 to take Blake Miller, the right tackle out of Clemson. We're now in the bottom 6 picks of the bottom of the first round. And the first of those, with the 27th pick, I have the San Francisco 49ers selecting Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, the safety out of Toledo. Man, goodness gracious, what a playmaker. This guy is a rocket ship out there, right? This is a guy like Quinyon Mitchell a couple of years ago. Toledo has just got speed in the secondary, and EMW is the latest example of that. San Francisco, I think, could use that right now. This is the NFC West, the hardest division in NFL football. A lot of pass-happy offenses out there in the NFC West. San Francisco's got a pretty good cornerback class. I think they could upgrade in the safety position. They did address over the offseason the need for a wide receiver for Brock Purdy. We saw them go out there and get Mike Evans. We saw them get out there and get Christian Kirk, right? Deep threat, slot receiver. You picked up the wide receivers that you needed. And so I think that gives them a little bit of flexibility to shore up the roster. You're also probably going to get Nick Bosa back. You're going to get Mykel Williams back as edge rushers. I think that when you look at this roster, the 49ers are in a really good place right now, right? I think that if you put all of the pieces together on this one, I think that Kyle Shanahan's got a pretty good team. I would not be surprised to see them make a pretty deep run into the playoffs here in 2026, assuming that the injuries don't happen as badly as they did last year. It seemed like there was a direct link from the field to the IR for anybody that was playing on the 49ers defensive roster last year. I think this is a year that if they can stay healthy, the 49ers have a really good-looking team. And I think if you bring in EMW, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, again, that fast defensive back, probably a safety, probably a strong safety, could maybe play free safety depending on how they want to use him. But I think that he's going to be a nice complement to some good lockdown corners on a defense that already has a lot of tools out there. And so I'm looking forward to see what he will do. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren going at number 27 to the San Francisco 49ers. With the 28th pick of the 2026 NFL Draft, my hometown Houston Texans select Caleb Lomu, the offensive tackle out of Utah. We did see earlier in the round Spencer Fano, the right tackle out of Utah, go to the Eagles, who traded up to pick him. Now I see Caleb Lomu being drafted with the second Utah offensive lineman going in this class to the Texans here. I think that Lomu has got some versatility, though. You know, he played primarily as a left tackle in college. You know, you've got Arantre Ursary that's already the starting left tackle at the Texans. I think he's playing just fine. This is a massive human being, right, out of Minnesota. Very capable left tackle if he can get the penalties under control. I think that Lomu could fill in a lot of different positions that the Texans need help in on their offensive line, who really struggled to protect C.J. Stroud last year. Lomu, you know, he's a guy that can line up a bunch of different positions. Maybe they kick him inside to guard. Maybe if you need him to, you put him at their right tackle. Wherever they did just re-sign their right tackle, if I recall correctly. But I think that versatility and just getting good players on the offensive line and then seeing how it goes in training camp of what position they're ultimately going to play, I think that's probably the strategy that the Texans are going to embark on here for 2026. And of course, Lomu is a big, versatile player, needs to put on a little bit of strength from I've heard from the scouting reports on him, but I think he can plug into a bunch of different positions. That's why I have the Texans taking Caleb Lomu at number 28, the starting left tackle out of Utah for a zone blocking scheme. With the 29th pick of the NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs have acquired the pick from the Los Angeles Rams. We know this was a trade that they made out there. Trent McDuffie goes to the Rams. Great lockdown cornerback that's going to go to Los Angeles now. Kansas City picks up this pick in the first round. And with 29, the pick number 29, the Kansas City Chiefs, I have them drafting Avion Terrell, the cornerback out of Clemson. This is a guy that's really good in zone coverage, really very instinctive, right? This is a guy that can knock out a lot of fumbles, forced a lot of fumbles in his college career. Probably the best zone eyes, good instinctive zone eyes of anyone in the secondary that's going to go in the first round of the draft this year. His brother AJ played for the Falcons, another cornerback, another player in the secondary. Good football IQ, somebody that you would call a junkyard dog if you're an evaluator of NFL scouts. A guy that gets out there and just brings it every single play, not afraid to stop the run, not afraid to take the hits for the tackles. Tends to play a lot of zones in that Spags defense for the Chiefs. I think that's where Terrell's going to fit really nicely. And knowing that they just lost McDuffie, they got some draft capital out of it. I think that you're going to kind of rebuild this team, a lot of that secondary. and it makes a lot of sense for the Chiefs at 29 to take Avion Terrell. With the 30th pick of the NFL draft, we also have the Miami Dolphins back on the clock. They traded Jalen Waddle to the Denver Broncos. They inherited their first-round pick this year. And with that 30th pick, I have the Miami Dolphins selecting Keldrick Falk, the edge rusher out of Auburn. This is another difficult evaluation for a lot of people in the draft. So I have seen mock drafts with Falk going in the top 10. Even going to number 9 to Kansas City. Some people I've seen going that early. I don't think he's going to be that early. I don't think Falk is a true edge rusher. I might be surprised if he gets more than 5 sacks in his first season. This is a player that's got a great culture. He's got great physical tools. He's huge. I believe 6'5", 280, if not 270. So you can line him up, as a 4-3 defensive end. You can even kick him inside if you wanted to. Just a player that's got the versatility for a defensive line that wants to figure out how to use him. Keeping in mind, he's also only 20 years old. You got plenty of time in that first contract, first 5 years, to figure out how you're going to line this up correctly. And I think that makes sense for the Dolphins. You just lost Bradley Chubb during the offseason. You've got to have some kind of rushing presence to help out Chop Robinson there on the defensive line. Yes, we know you probably want to draft a wide receiver since Tyreek is out now. You just traded Jalen Waddle to the Broncos, but this is also a wide receiver heavy class. You can pick that up in the second round. I think it makes sense to go with Keldrick Falk there to the Dolphins at pick number 30. Final 2 picks of the first round. The first of those is at number 31. The New England Patriots. I have selecting Cassius Howell, the edge rusher out of Texas A&M. First of all, let's address the arm length. We know he has short arms. Let's get over it. He was highly productive through all of college. The concern here is that if you're an edge rusher, you don't want to get locked up by an offensive tackle who's got their arms on you because you have short arms. You can't get around that. Cassius Howell, in my opinion, certainly can. First of all, this is a 3-4 scheme. He's going to be an outside linebacker, not a 4-3 defensive end. He's going to use speed in the bend and the edge to get across, to get around the offensive lineman and get to the quarterback. He's not going to be a power rusher that runs right through them. Secondly, New England does not care about arm length. They drafted Will Campbell, number 4, as an offensive tackle. They said the same things about him, and until the playoffs, he was pretty reliable during the regular season. I'm not going to say he was fantastic in the playoffs. He gave up way too many sacks to Drake May, but that's going to be something that's going to work out over time, in my opinion. He's going to progress. He's going to be more productive as an offensive lineman. I think that it's just the bigger thing here is Mike Vrabel is going to want to have really good players on this team. Cassius Howell, again, had their production in college. I think he's a right scheme fit for this defense. Knowing that the Patriots need some juice on the defensive line, Cassius Howell at number 31 goes to New England. He's an edge rusher out of Texas A&M. And the final pick of the 2026 NFL Draft, I had the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks selecting Colton Hood, the cornerback out of Tennessee. First of all, this could very well be a trade down. We know that the Seahawks love to trade down, especially at the bottom of the first round, pick up more draft capital. Very likely, I already have 2 trades of teams trading up in the first round in my mock draft. I don't think there's going to be a third if the board plays the way that it does like this. But I think that Colton Hood would be a natural fit to make the Legion of Boom even more intimidating. I mean, if you were throwing the ball against the Seahawks, dear Lord help you. Opposing quarterbacks just had no routes that there was any kind of separation or open space for their wide receivers. You did lose Tariq Woolen in the offseason. You've got a plug-and-play replacement for him here with Colton Hood. This is an intimidating presence as cornerback. Hood is a press cover, just like Jermod McCoy was right there out of Tennessee. That's the kind of in-your-face play style that the Seahawks like to have. We know that they also use the nickelback quite often. You've got Nick Amadwari, who's a very good, strong safety out there. You've got a team that can not only be right in the face of opposing wide receivers, but also contribute to the run or even to the blitz if you want to put them closer to the line of scrimmage. That's where Colton Hood is just going to excel. I mean, this is going to be another great secondary piece for a secondary that's already very, very difficult to throw against anyway. Looking forward to seeing what Colton Hood can do with the Seattle Seahawks there at number 32. So I'm going to, at this point, show a quick screen share of the picks that I have thus far. I am hoping that it shows up right here. This is the compilation of all of the first round picks that we have from number 1 with Fernando Mendoza going to the Raiders, all the way down to number 32 with Colton Hood going to the Seattle Seahawks. I love doing these. I love mock draft season. It's always a lot of fun to see teams rebuilding their rosters, addressing the needs that they have and the voids that they have in the rosters. Also, with looking at who they consider and their evaluators consider to be the best players available, especially at the top of the first round out there right there. So as you're looking at this, keep in mind there was a lot of influence that went into, what's going to happen in those top 10 picks. Why would you trade up if you were the Cardinals or the Eagles? And then what's the bottom of the round going to look like as teams continue to get better each and every year? Best of luck to my New Orleans Saints. I'm hoping that we go to the playoffs and win the NFC South this year. To be determined. There's some good competition as I've given some good players to some other good teams in that division. But I hope you liked it. If you like this mock draft, I hope that you leave me some feedback. Did I give your team the player that you wanted them to select? If you do want to follow along, check out 7 Investing or follow along with other of my mock draft coverage that I'll do once a year here on YouTube, just to have some fun with this as well. And again, remember, 7 Investing is where you can find stock market recommendations. You can get started for your first 7 days for absolutely free. So I enjoyed it. Please leave me some feedback. Best of luck to your team in the 2026 NFL Draft, which will be April 23rd in Pittsburgh. Looking forward to seeing how that shakes out. We'll see you at the draft, and then I'll see you again next year.